Okay, what if I told you that our entire genetic code, the very blueprint for life, might be evolving towards one single hidden number? It sounds like science fiction, right? Well, today we're going to dive into some really fascinating research that suggests exactly that. We're talking about a mathematical constant that could totally change how we think about our own DNA.
So let's get right into it. This whole idea really kicks off with one simple but kind of profound question about our genome. So here's the question. Is there some kind of mathematical perfect score for our DNA? I mean, is it possible that our genome isn't just a jumble of code, but it's actually striving for something, like it's trying to hit a specific optimal number, a state of perfect mathematical balance?
Now, this idea wasn't just some fringe theory. It comes from a researcher named Jean-Claude, and it actually caught the attention of some real scientific heavyweights. We're talking about Professor Francois Gros, who co-discovered messenger RNA. I mean, that's a big deal. He saw this as a potentially remarkable new way to look at our DNA.
Okay, so what is this perfect score? Well, the research gives it a name, the Human Genome Optimum, or, HGO for short. So at its core, the HGO is just a ratio. You remember the building blocks of DNA, right? A, T, C, and G? Well, what this does is it basically counts up all the C's and G's in our DNA and divides that by the number of T's and A's. And what this research proposes is that there's one single perfect number for this ratio, a kind of ideal state of balance for our entire genome.
And here it is. This is the number. It's a theoretical constant, and what's really wild is that it's derived from a formula that actually involves the golden ratio, phi. So this is the perfect score that our DNA is supposedly trying to hit. But this isn't just some number pulled out of thin air. Here's where it gets really, really interesting. When the researchers actually calculated this score for real genomes, they found an incredible trend. As you can see here, more recent human genomes, our genomes, are measurably closer to this ideal number than older ones, like in Neanderthals. It's almost as if evolution itself is nudging our DNA closer and closer to this exact value.
Okay, so if our DNA is trying to reach this perfect balance, what happens when something throws a wrench in the works? Well, that brings us right to the chaotic world of the cancer cell.
Yeah, so one of the hallmarks of many cancers is this process called loss of heterozygosity, or LOH for short. The easiest way to think about it is like this. Your DNA is like two copies of a giant instruction manual. LOH is basically when random pages get ripped out of one of those copies, and, from the outside, these deletions just look totally random and chaotic.
So this is the million-dollar question the research set out to answer. When these seemingly random deletions happen, what do they do to the genome's overall optimality score? Do they mess it up and push it further away from that perfect HGO number? Or, and this is the really weird part, could they actually be pushing it closer? Well, the answer they found was so consistent, so predictable, that it led them to propose what they call a universal law. It's a simple rule that seems to predict what these random deletions will do with, frankly, shocking accuracy. All right, so to get this law, first you have to understand how they split up our chromosomes. It's pretty simple, actually. They basically put them into two teams. You've got the upstream team on the left. These are all the chromosomes whose own individual scores are below that perfect HGO number. And then you have the downstream team on the right, and their scores are all above it. Okay, and the law itself. It's incredibly simple. It all depends on which team the chromosome is on. If a deletion happens on one of those upstream chromosomes, like number 13, it actually messes up the genome's overall score. It degrades it. But, and here's the kicker, if a deletion happens on a downstream chromosome, like number 10, it actually improves the total score, pushing it closer to that perfect HGO number. So, how well does this rule actually work? Well, the researchers put it to the test. They looked at 240 published cases of these deletions across a bunch of different cancers, and the law correctly predicted what would happen almost 95% of the time. That's just incredible. Yeah, let's look at a couple of concrete examples here. Take chromosome 13, that's on the upstream team. And just like the law predicts, in 90% of the breast cancer cases they looked at, deletions on that chromosome made the genome less optimal. Then you look at chromosome 10, which is downstream. Deletions there are common in brain cancers like glioblastoma, and sure enough, they improved the genome score in 93% of those cases.
Okay, so this is where it gets really counterintuitive, right? If a cancer mutation can actually push the genome score closer to this mathematical perfection, Your first thought is, well, that must be a good thing, right? Maybe it means the tumor's less dangerous.
Well, the research suggests the exact opposite. And this is probably the most startling finding in the whole study. It seems like this strange drive toward perfection is actually linked to how aggressive and dangerous a cancer can become. So to figure this out, the researchers did a direct comparison. They looked at the genetic deletions in less aggressive, sort of contained local tumors, and they compared them to the deletions found in highly aggressive, stage 4 cancers, the ones that have spread. And when they looked at the data from neuroblastoma patients, the results were just stark. You can see it right here. The less severe local tumors, those are the orange bars, they only cause a small improvement in that HGO score. But look at the blue bars, the stage 4 tumors. They caused a way bigger improvement, pushing the genome much, much closer to that so-called perfect score.
I mean, the difference is just staggering. On average, the stage 4 tumors improved the genome's optimality score 2.3 times more than the local ones did. Think about that. The more dangerous the cancer, the harder it seemed to be pushing the genome toward this mathematical optimum.
And this led the researcher Jean-Claude Perez to a really chilling conclusion. He suggests that the very mechanism that makes a tumor invasive and dangerous might be because its genome is becoming, in this one very specific mathematical way, more optimal than the DNA in a healthy person's cell. So, could a single number really change how we understand cancer? It's a pretty mind-bending idea, isn't it? That underneath all the chaos of cancer, there might be this hidden mathematical order, a universal law that suggests the most dangerous tumors aren't the most broken ones, but maybe they're the ones striving for a dangerous kind of perfection. It really makes you wonder, right? This could completely change how we diagnose a cancer's aggressiveness, not by looking at which genes are broken, but by measuring how close its entire genome has gotten to this one single hidden number.